Good afternoon. We are live. It is 8 p.m. here in Warsaw, and I'm live with TDK. Your name is really long, so I'm just going to call you TDK. Welcome back.
Yeah, it's good to be here again. Hello, everyone. And yeah, glad to be on the stream again with you guys here.
No, you're very welcome. I did send an invitation a few hours ago to Thunderous One to join us if he was available. I'm not sure if you saw the message, but I just thought, if he were available, he could perhaps jump in as well. He's always got interesting takes. So welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us again this evening. I am going to be talking about, or we will be discussing, monotheism once more. I want to talk about the pagan influences on Islam as recorded by scholars more than a century ago, more than 150 years ago, as well as within the Islamic sources. And we want to re-examine more specifically the thesis that was put forward by Dr. Robert Morey. Now, in the previous talk, I did mention that Robert Morey didn't make up those ideas. He got them from other scholars, from serious, very serious scholars of the Ugaritic and Canaanite religion and culture, who said that, look, there's overlap here with Islam. This religion, Islam, seems to have a pagan origin. So we'll be looking at Robert Morey's thoughts and ideas taken from his speeches, taken from his book, and we'll be examining that, and I'll be adding my own thoughts and modern research to that. So yeah, TDK, your thoughts?
So far that we've discussed about Allah being a moon deity, with all of the references that you've been researching and the scholars you reference, it's all pointing to Allah being a moon deity. And yeah, I would just like to cover a few points, and and then you can take it from there. So the last time we discussed in Surah 1, verse 2 with Alhamdulillah, and as Saint Murad, he would have pointed out that there's definitely the Arabic is not right there as well, and so when we look at it, it never said yeah. Do you want to add something?
Yeah, no. So the word Allah, from a Western Christian Arabic point of view, we look at it as the God or the deity, the La, as a definite article. Whereas the Islamic view is the Arabic view is it is a proper name. So it's frank. It's not the God. It's actually a name. So there's this confusion there, even so within the Islamic usage and sources, but it's a singular proper name. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, because if you would have had it like we discussed, the Christians before, they never used it. They used al-ilah, or the word ilah is for God. So when being said alhamdulillah, if it could have been alhamdulillah or alhamdulillah al-ilah, which could have been the God, but it's Allah, which is the name. Praise be to that God, as you said.
Yeah.
It's a name. It's the name of the God.
And if it's a proper name, then al is not the, then it's part of the name. Name is
it's
Allah.
part of the name.
Which means that you can't suddenly drop half the name and it doesn't become praise be to the deity. It's, so that doesn't really make much sense. But in this case, if it's the deity, then the name of the deity is La. And if you look at Allat, her name is not Allah. Her name is Lat, the Lat.
Yeah.
Al-Manat.
That's right.
Manat, not Al. You can say the Manat, but it's not Al-Manat. That's not her name. Her name is Manat, the same as La.
Yeah, that's right. That's the point. And the Quran is pointing to that. Praise be to Allah, not praise be to Allah. So even if you would have noticed, even when the Muslim, they're saying Alhamdulillah, they're correcting it as well. They're not saying it that way. So either the Arabic is wrong, which would prove Allah is false, or either it is right, which it is the name of the God of the Muslim, which is drawn from the Aramaic, the Al, and Al means God, and La is the name of the God, as we have pointed out in the previous stream. So yeah.
So Mick, we're going to be looking at this al-illat thing. I've already covered this in my previous talk with TDK, we've already discussed al-Ilah. That was strictly a Christian usage. Al-Ilah was the Christian usage, meaning the God, the deity Yahweh. Al-Ilah, Yahweh. Whereas in Islam, it's always been Allah as a proper name. So we're going to be looking at this, and there are scholars that do say that this whole contraction idea doesn't gel because the name is present in pagan times already. So yeah, so Jill Biden apparently dropped out of the presidential race, according to Sergeant Grinch. So okay, I'll have to check that afterwards. Okay, so guys, let's jump in. So we're going to look at Robert Morey's thesis, and he was well known back in the 80s. Well, we'll discuss him briefly, but he promoted the idea, and of course Muslims have taken to task this idea that, clearly Allah is not pagan, Allah is not a moon god. I did my monotheism series, which was about 6 to 8 hours long, 190 slides, and I had not heard of Robert Morey at the time. I learned about Robert Morey after I did my monotheism series. So now I've gone back and I've looked over Robert Morey's work, and I want to look at what he saw and what I've seen and try to find links between the two. Any final thoughts that you want to add before we continue, TDK?
No, that's okay. You could continue.
Yeah, Mr. Rock says, reading through some of the older Western scholars on Islam in your archive was such a breath of fresh air. Yes, there's scholarship on Islam in the West going back to the 1700s. And there was extensive scholarship by the Germans and by the British. They were doing huge work on Islam in the 18 and 1900s. All of this got forgotten after World War II. It just completely got dropped and forgotten. And I've been going through some of that. A moon dirty? Yeah, definitely a moon dirty. Yeah, I wouldn't call it a deity. Right.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah, so let's jump into this. Oh, by the way, guys, I am streaming on X and I'm streaming on Rumble right now. So I'm not sure how many people I have watching me on Rumble right now. But yeah, I'm streaming on X live and on Rumble live. So I've got 3 viewers on X. Okay, guys, so Robert Morey. He was born in 1946, died in 2019, Christian apologist and pastor known for his extensive writings criticizing Islam, Wicca, and non-evangelical Christian beliefs. Right? He founded the Faith Defenders Ministry, authored over 40 books, and held various academic and honorary degrees in theology and Islamic studies. Some of his books, Death and the Afterlife, The Islamic Invasion, Confronting the World's Fastest Growing Religion. Now, whether Islam is the world's fastest growing religion, I think there can be some dispute around that. But of course, Islam has branded itself as that. And I believe this Islamic invasion, that is the case. That is happening. He was definitely prophetic. Yes, TDK, you wanted to say?
No, yeah, that's definitely right. Yeah, invasion is the right word. I love the title. Yeah, they definitely invade and come by the sword. Yeah.
And what is interesting, Father Socrates says all religions are the same, which is fascinating. Let me actually just jump forward from that. So I'm just going to jump forward in my slides because Father Socrates is wrong. It takes a special kind of ignorance to say that kind of thing. But I'm going to jump forward just briefly. So in the 20th century, we had this revival of this 20th century relativism and what's called religious universalism. All religions worship the same God under different names like Krishna, Zeus, Isis, and Allah. And this suggests that God is indifferent to names. However, this contradicts biblical teachings. The Bible emphasizes very specific worship. The God Yahweh, as he is called, as he names himself in the Bible, as he identifies, says, "Thou shalt have no other gods before me." God is described as a jealous God in Scripture. The Old Testament prophets and the New Testament apostles assert the uniqueness of the names of God and of his appellation as Yahweh. Acts 4:12 highlights, there is only one name given under heaven whereby men and women can be saved. That name is not Muhammad. That name is not Krishna. That name is not Buddha. Any thoughts before I go on and just finish this slide and go backwards again?
Yeah, I completely agree. And Jesus himself said it like, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man come to the Father except through me. So it's making a clear distinction that these other religions, they cannot lead you to God. There's as the scripture in Acts 4:12 says, there's only one name given, and that name is Jesus Christ, no other name. So yeah.
Right. Now, let me just remove the comment again. Not all names for God or the deity of a particular religion refers to the true God, right? You have Ka, Shiva, Brahman, Zeus, and many, many others. Muhammad, of course, asserts that Allah is the only true God, right? So let me go back to my first slide, and we'll talk about Allah, the God of Islam, and we'll talk about what Dr. Robert Morey has to talk about. Now, I do expect this particular talk will have more than one episode. I've got, I think, 16 slides here, so I don't want to overwhelm anyone, but we'll just do these slides, and it shouldn't take us, hopefully, a little bit more than an hour. So, one, Robert Morey talks about the early origins of Allah, right? And he says Allah from moon god to monotheistic deity. Muhammad's early life. He speaks of Muhammad's upbringing and religious experiences. Robert Morey then talks about Muhammad growing up in Mecca, worshipping Allah, and the three goddesses, Allat, Al-Uzza, and Manat. This is even in Muslim sources. In fact, the Muslim sources actually speak of him sacrificing a white or red ewe to Al-Manat, and he supposedly named his boys after Al-Manat. Any thoughts from you, TDK?
Yeah, interestingly, there was a verse in the Quran about intercession to these daughters of Allah, and the verse was removed when Muhammad later found out that he's making a mistake. So there's a verse that was abrogated, and it's in, I think I think I shared that in the video that I did. Allah is the moon god part 2. So yeah, this is definitely true, and it's in their book from their scholars. So yeah.
Right. So I have covered this in monotheism, and of course what I can do is I can add those specific details into episodes 2 and 3 of this particular series. We're talking about, well, revisiting monotheism and Dr. Robert Morey's thesis. So then there's persecution and challenges, right? The opposition and the satanic verses incident, which I think is very, very important, those satanic verses. And then there's the hijrah and Muhammad's migration to Medina. And of course, the first hijrah, which is usually conveniently forgotten and overlooked, is that Muhammad's people go to Ethiopia, which is the first Christian country, where black people adopted Christianity. We had the eunuch who'd met Philip, goes there, converts the king, and then Ethiopia becomes the first Christian country, probably before Armenia. And then on top of that, they become a very powerful kingdom called the Aksumite Kingdom. They invade Arabia, and they actually dominate culturally, religiously, militarily, financially. They dominate Arabia for an extended period, and they actually had a complete Bible. So while people are searching for a Bible in Arabic in Arabia, the Ethiopians had one in the, 2nd, 3rd century. Any comments?
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And also, I think what's his name? Waraka was also doing an Arabic Bible. He was translating as well. So yeah, like the places as well that Muhammad got his sources from is like, it's really mixed up. And yeah, there was as you said there, it was Ethiopia, and then it spread out there. So yeah, definitely.
Right. So, or rather, it should perhaps be said that Christianity had spread by the 2nd century significantly. I mean, in the 1st century already, but by the 2nd century, it was powerful, far from Rome, in northeastern Africa already. So now, I've just mentioned this slide, so I won't repeat this now, but I think we've covered this already. Now, this is okay. Well, this is by. The name will come to me in a minute. No worry, I do cover this book again. I come back to this. So this is the Doctrines of Islam. This is mentioned by Morey, and also this is by Arthur Jeffrey. Yes. So he writes in his book, Muhammad and His Religion, the first and most important doctrine in the Creed of Islam is the doctrine of God. The name Allah, as the Quran itself is witness, was well known in pre-Islamic Arabia. Indeed, both it and its feminine form, al-Lat, are found not infrequently among the names in inscriptions from North Arabia. So al-Lat, the Lat. So why wouldn't
Yeah.
Allah be just the La? How did it suddenly
Yeah.
become a proper name?
Exactly. Yeah.
Actually, let
That's
me
it.
bring up. Yeah. So Jeffrey is referenced very often according to this particular chart. As you guys have seen, these are foreign words in the Quran by Arthur Jeffrey. This is his 1938 chart, right? Does need a little bit of updating, but you can see here Syriac, Aramaic, Hebrew, Greek, and Ethiopic. Ethiopic words have a large influence, which means that you've got Pahlavi, Persian, Akkadian, South Arabian, Armenian, Phoenician, Avestic, Mandaean, Sanskrit, Pazan, Nabatean, Safaite. So, in other words, Islam is a hodgepodge, a mishmash of a number of different cultures and traditions. It is not some sort of miraculous standalone that popped up out of nowhere. Any thoughts,
Yeah.
TD?
Yeah, that's true, and that's why they don't understand. You cannot understand the Quran without going to these other sources to explain what these terms or what these names are about. As you and Saint Murad would have discussed about Ar-Rahman, the name that he took as well. So many of the cultures and practices, it's like put together, and it's in Islam.
Right. And according to this list, we've got up to 55 languages in this pure Arabic that was used to write the Quran. And there's even a reference here to Norse. So, yeah, so do read his book on that. But yeah, okay, let's continue. So, the common theory, he writes, is that it is formed from illah, the common word for a God, right? So that's an indefinite article. And the article al, thus alillah, the God. So you have the definite article and then God, the God, which,
Yeah.
according to the common theory, becomes Allah, God. This theory, he says, is untenable. In fact, the name is one of the words borrowed into the language in pre-Islamic times from Aramaic. The old Arabian paganism, both in the north and in South Arabia, was polytheistic. But under the influence of the surrounding culture, and here he would be talking about Christian culture as well as Gnostic influences that were imitating Christianity and competing with it. But under the influence of the surrounding Gnostic slash monotheistic slash Christian culture, a strong movement towards monotheism had developed. The legends about the Hanifs are one evidence of this. Muhammad was only one of several preachers of monotheism in the Arabia of his day. Notice, one of several preachers of monotheism. Muhammad's concept of Allah in the Quran falls far short of that of other monotheistic religions in the Near East. It's an undeveloped form of monotheism. TDK, over to you.
Yeah, and this is where like the previous stream that we did pointed out that al ilah, and it's not sure that it comes and become Allah. So it's uncertain, and from the Aramaic, as we have spoken about, al means God or Allah, but it's not the same as Allah. And with monotheism, it was not something new that came about with Muhammad being the only one. So
TDK, you're afraid of Allah. Allah's an entropy, an absorber. And you guys, in other words, he's calling Allah the Borg. We are the Borg, and you will be assimilated. The meme has just come to life.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. The meme has now just taken on a life of its own. We were right.
Yeah.
Oh man, you can't make this up. You cannot make this up. Thanks, Sheikh Faisal. Best laugh I've had all day, man. Oh boy, sorry.
Yeah, Islam is just a comedy. You just have free comedy from Islam.
Yeah. Allah is the Borg and you will be assimilated. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so I think this is very significant. So in other words, there were other flavors of monotheism in Arabia of the day. Now, I've got a lot of notes on Arabia, which goes against the grain, but it's very heavily researched from the 60s, from the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, that obviously harkens back to research prior to that in the 1800s and early 1900s that's been forgotten, that I actually still need to present on this channel, that talks about Christianity in Arabia pre-Islam and at the time of Islam. There's a lot, and lots of scholars will claim there was no Christianity in the region, but this does not seem to be the case. And I think many scholars have put out poor information, and many scholars are anti-Christian. I think that much is an honest statement. And there is information that will change this particular perception, and I don't think we should believe everything we are told. All right. Let me see what they took an old term that is not Arabic, and when you find it in other languages, say it proves that only Allah was worshipped. Yeah, definitely clown world. Let's continue. We're not afraid of rocks. Thank you very much, Jamison. Yes, we are not afraid of rocks. Okay, so let's continue here. So it is asserted that Allah is the same God revealed in the Bible. With this is false. We did a previous episode. I've done a couple of shows on that recently. They're clearly not the same deity. Scholarship shows the name of Allah predated the Quran. TDK, just jump in and interrupt me at any time if you want to.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. You can continue. It's okay.
This is true. Andrew, I agree with you. Folks, I did invite Andrew Martin on to do a chat with me to talk about his work and his website and his articles. So Andrew, if you ever feel up to it, do let me know. I'll be happy to bring you on. So Mo was known for overhearing Christians, and I think Waraka was a Gnostic himself, not a Christian. Yeah, or at very least one of these heretical sort of groups. Yeah, definitely, very probably Gnostic, because Gnosticism was a massive enemy, even in Arabia at that time. Now, I have shown, and I don't want to litigate and go over every single source I've already showed previously, but in the Islamic sources, Allah is pre-Arabian. I'll show a little bit of that, but I don't want to go into every source and derail this discussion because I'm trying to focus on Robert Morey's ideas. But my previous talks will and have covered this in much more detail. Allah was associated with a specific Arabian deity worshipped by the Quraysh tribe. Dr. Arthur Jeffrey noted that the name Allah was well known in pre-Islamic Arabia in the book Muhammad and His Religion. We just quoted from that earlier. Allah's feminine form, Allat, appeared in pre-Islamic inscriptions. Morey mentions Professor Gibb highlighted that the Quran did not explain Allah's name, assuming that listeners knew it. This is not something that is unknown. Many scholars have since stated the Quran doesn't explain a lot because it assumes that the hearers, the listeners, know what they're talking about. Any comments from you, TDK?
Yeah, that's true. And when you ask those who says that Allah is just a word, I mean God, then when you ask what's Allah name, they don't know the name. But for Muslims, the name is Allah, as stated. Yeah.
If Allah means the La, then what is Allah's name? If His name means the God, then He has no name.
He has no name. They don't know.
So His name is either Allah or Allah means the God. In which case, there has to be a different word for deity, a different word for God, right? In Arabic, which is the case.
Yeah, that's right. Ilah.
Now, the common understanding is the word Allah is a compound Arabic term formed from al, the definite article, meaning the, and illah, meaning God. Now, it's assumed that al-ilah is the Arabization of the Greek ho theos, right? Ho theos. Etymologically, Allah is purely Arabic, not derived from Hebrew, Aramaic, Greek, or Egyptian. Now, we're going to have a look at this, and I'll throw in some additional evidence which we may want to consider. And the last one, the name Allah, is absent in the Hebrew Old Testament and Greek New Testament. Notice the name Allah, not the word Allah. And there's reason I raise this specifically because there's going to be a little bit of a dispute coming up shortly. Any comments, TDK?
No, you can continue.
Oh. So that's fair enough. Here's someone you can do it too. Says Waraka bin Naufal bin Asad bin Abdul Uzza. Exactly. Thank you. Waraka was a pagan. Abdul Uzza, according to his full name. So clearly, even if he converted to some form of Gnosticism or some kind of unorthodox Christian belief, right? Some heterodox Christianity. Clearly, the pagan influence is visible in terms of the names of people in that milieu. Yeah. Right. So the doctrines of Islam, right? The name Allah was well known in pre-Islamic Arabia, and he says this theory of al-ilah is untenable, right? It's borrowed from the Aramaic, so he speaks of that. Now, this is from my monotheism slides, and also from the slides that I did where Allah is not Yahweh. The name Allah, as the Quran is witness, was well known in pre-Islamic Arabia. So the word Allah is thought to be derived from the Aramaic word for God, which is Allah or Ellaha, right? The pre-Islamic usage, the name was used in pre-Islamic Arabia as evidenced by its presence in inscriptions from North Arabia. That would also put it around Petra, right, potentially. There's the feminine form. Jeffrey notes that the feminine form, Allat, was also found in these inscriptions, indicating a polytheistic context. And in fact, we know that Allah had 3 daughters. We also know that the god Baal, who was also worshipped by Muhammad's tribe at that time at the Kaaba, also had, according to some versions of the Baal myth, had 3 female daughters, right? 3 daughters. So you've got Allah was Hubal, Hubal is Baal, Baal had 3 daughters, Allah had 3 daughters. Do you think that's a coincidence, TDK?
No, that's not a coincidence. Definitely not.
Yeah. So there was a polytheistic context for the use of these terms before Islam. And Islam mentions them. It's crazy. It brings back these pagan deities. So borrowing from Aramaic, the incorporation of Allah into Arabic is part of a broader pattern of linguistic borrowing from Aramaic that occurred in pre-Islamic times. So God is the generic term, Elaha, Allah, God. So is that the name? That's not the name of God. That's just the term God in Aramaic, right?
Yeah, that's a term used for God. Yeah.
Andrew Mott says Mo also shows in his Quran that the daughters are like daughters, angels, servants of Allah, which is in accord with polytheism. All right.
Yeah.
So also continuity and transformation. So while the name Allah existed before Islam, the Islamic tradition redefined and elevated its meaning, making it the name of the one true God in at least Islamic monotheistic worship, or at least in Muhammad's monotheistic worship. I've already in the past, and I will again in the near future, discuss Western scholars who basically have stated, and this goes back to the 50s and prior, that there's a guy called Kuhn who speaks about this, and says, effectively, Muhammad just rolled up all of the pagan deities, the whole polytheistic pantheon, the Babylonian / Arabian pantheon, into one and just called it Allah.
Yeah, that's definitely what he did, because you can see all of the practices from those deities, they're implemented in his religion. So it's coming from all of those cultures.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Andrew Martin has it on his website, guys, just showing you the link to the article. Did Lloyd say monotheism? Yes, I said monotheism because Islam is monotheism. Here's the point. Now, I didn't know about Robert Morey when I did my monotheism series. I'd watched something, I think, by Christian Prince, like a short video, like 10, 15 minutes or something. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. Let me dig. And I dug. And then eventually I ended up writing like 195 slides. And then only afterwards did I learn about Robert Morey. So I've only just now made slides based on Robert Morey. That said, monotheism. So how do you know the cross is important to Christianity, TDK?
Because it's the core teaching and belief from the Christians that it's from the cross. Yeah.
Okay, but don't we have the cross on our churches, on our Bibles, on our books, isn't the cross everywhere in Christianity as a visible symbol?
Yeah, definitely.
So wouldn't you say it's historically and religiously, philosophically, morally significant in Christianity?
Definitely, it's significant in Christianity.
Because it's so visible. By the
Yeah,
same token, because wouldn't you say that the pagan crescent moon and the star are significant
yeah,
in Islam because it's everywhere, like even on top of their churches, their mosques?
exactly. Yeah, that's their symbol, and that's what is it's a core about moon and the star.
Yeah. So therefore, it's significant for them. Let's go back to the secrets of Islam because you guys are not aware of it. Oh, try harder, okay, Sheikh. Try harder. Okay. Blah blah blah. Yeah, can someone just pause him for 20 minutes or something? Okay, moving on. Right now, let's look at the word Allah in the Bible. Now, I haven't had a chance to dig deeply into this. I know that Rob Christian has spoken about this, but I have never watched any of his shows discussing this. Let's look at the word Strong's Hebrew 427. There's a few other references too in Joshua 24:26. And Joshua wrote these words in the book of the law of God and took a great stone and set it up there under an oak that was by the sanctuary of the Lord. That oak, that tree is significant, right? The tree here. So this is Allah, right? The word is actually pronounced as Muslims do it today. Allah. Pronunciation, Allah. Actually, let me go there and I will bring this up. I did not share my screen with audio, so I would have to reshare my screen with audio for this to be visible. So I'm going to stop my screen. I'm going to reshare. But some screens that you share audio, so I'm going to do entire screen, also share system audio. Let me try and do this. Nope, can't do that. No, I cannot share the audio. I have a problem here, so let me go back to share screen. Give me 1 second. I'm trying to share the window. Tell me if you hear the audio.
No, I don't know if it's.
Okay, so fine, yeah. So unfortunately,
Yeah,
there's some issue with my Windows, and I cannot share audio successfully. So yeah, I'll have to do it without that. But this one is Allah, Allah, and that's Hebrew. Okay, so this is an oak, Hebrew H427. Right now, I'll just have a look at this. Allah, masculine noun, variation of Hebrew 424. We can have a look at that in a minute. Right, and it's oak. Right, and notice here, Hebrew Allah, oak. This is actually significant in the context of Abraham. That's actually significant in the context of Abraham. So oak. Then you go here, Ella, feminine noun, right? It's also limited to this terebinth tree. Ella, feminine, an oak or other strong tree. So that's a reference to tree. Any comments or thoughts on that before I go on?
no, he said enough there. There's nothing to add there.
Okay, let me continue then. So we have oak, right, or tree. Then Allah is also referenced again in the Bible as curse. We have Allah, and this one is just Allah, right?
Yeah,
Allah,
yeah,
verb, and it translates as curse, right? To curse, to
yeah,
put under a curse. Allah, to adjure, usually in a bad sense. Okay? To imprecate, to adjure, to curse, to swear, to curse. So there's a negative connotation to Allah from the Hebrew in the Bible, which I think in
yeah,
neither case. Now, the reason I mentioned trees, and I'll come to Abraham, is that Abraham is warned not to worship trees as idols because that is nature worship, that is paganism, that is something that God forbids. Any comment?
yeah. God did forbid from worshiping trees and those stuff. And yeah, if you look at it this way now, then Allah is like a tree or likened to a tree, or he's cursed. Yeah,
Yeah, oak is great. Oak is great. Oku Akbar. Right. Oak, you say, probably a coincidence, but plenty of pagans revered oak trees as a symbol of resilience. Yeah. How many oak trees are there in Arabia, though? Where'd they get that idea? One has to wonder. Yeah. And Mick M says it's Ashra worship. Thank you. Yes, there's certain truth to that. That's Ashra worship. There's a level of truth to that. Yeah. I'll cover little bits of that as we go. Now, Abraham, the word Hanif, now that was mentioned by Jeffries as significant of this movement towards monotheism. Now, of course, Muslims will tell you Hanif means like righteous, and however, Hanif means upright as in upright pillar. I've covered this in monotheism, my original monotheism series. And Yahweh hates the pillars. He hates the worship of the pillars and of the trees. In Genesis, Abraham and his descendants worship in a manner that includes mention of trees and pillars. Abraham was a Sabaean prior to Yahwism, prior to worshiping and following Yahweh. Right? This is in the book Israelite Religions, an Archaeological and Biblical Survey by Richard Hess. In Deuteroscopy 16, 21 to 22, it's written, "You shall not plant for yourself any tree as a wooden idol or wooden image." Image here in the context of idol. "Near the altar which you build for yourself to the Lord your God. And you shall not set up a sacred pillar," that's the Hanif, "which the Lord your God hates." And Allah references himself as Hanif, and therefore would be a pillar, an idol, right, within the Quran. So I've discussed that in monotheism. I'm not going to go into any depth here. But the issue is Abraham must not worship tree idols. So that's paganism. Any comment?
Yeah, it's paganism, and the thing is that most of them will say it's that Allah is forbidden them from worshiping a tree or a moon or all these kinds of things. But yeah, as we have spoken about, like it's in disguise. Like he came with monotheism, but yeah, it's actually monotheism with all these practices inside the teaching. So one can simply say I'm monotheism, but the practices is not monotheism. It's monotheism. It's worshiping the moon god or moon practices, as we can all see. Yeah.
Yeah, we mentioned there were scholars that said it's the first pagan monotheism. It's the first monotheistic paganism.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a monotheism of a type, but it's a pagan monotheism. It's the first where paganism became monotheistic rather than polytheistic. And you can see here there are pillars inside, and I've discussed this in my monotheism series, the pillars inside the Kaaba. So yeah, those are the pillars. Just bear that in mind. Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, so now let's continue. So I've only got about 16 slides for this, guy, so this won't be longer than 1 hour, I think. But I have a cold, not well, so I don't want to go too long. Now, in Genesis and Exodus by John Rogerson and these other two guys, if patriarchal religion corresponds to some kind of historical reality, then presumably this is either some form of a genuinely ancient pre-Yahwistic religion, so a religion before Yahweh, or something that was an unorthodox strand within Yahwistic religion. In other words, they're speaking here in context of this kind of pagan religion that Abraham was following prior to following Yahweh. So they're saying either it's an ancient pre-Yahwistic religion, some sort of pagan movement, or it was an unorthodox heretical strand within Judaism. However, they state, the difficulty with the latter suggestion is precisely the complete lack of that holiness and exclusiveness, which is one of the most fundamental characteristics of Yahwism. Yahwism was a separation from paganism. So Christianity was a separation from paganism. The pagans were complaining that the Christians were taking too many people from paganism into their religion. So the pagans had to adapt and make their religions more like Christianity. And of course, every Tom, Dick, Harry, Muslim, and atheist is saying, well, Christianity is paganism, except in the past, the pagans were complaining that the Christians had a totally different religion that was stealing the pagans away from it. Yeah, any comment?
Yeah, that's the thing, that they don't understand, or they don't check back the sources or what Christianity actually teaches. So yeah, as you mentioned, Christianity was taking away people from worshiping idols or all these these pagan practices. So it cannot be that. So as we said here, monotheism in the form of as we call it, monotheism. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, say not three. There is only one moon. You're right. There can only be one. Thank you, Villainous. You always have very good takes
Yeah.
on issues. All right. Now let's continue here. So, Alleluia. Yeah. Allahu Akbar.
It's
Okay.
interesting.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Alleluia. So now we know that Muslims claim that Allah is found in the Bible. They claim that Muhammad is found in the Bible, right? And they cite often, and I've heard this myself, we've all seen it on YouTube, we've seen it in the comment section, Allahu Ya, Allahu Ya. We say that, don't we, in church? Allah, Allahu Ya.
Yeah. Which is the other form is like hallelujah, hallelujah. Yeah.
Yeah, we go Allahu Ya. As far as I know, Yah means Yahweh, and Allah's name
Yeah,
is not Yah because the Quran doesn't know
exactly.
about
Exactly. These people are finding some, like, they don't have anywhere to go, so they go to these silly claims and try to find Allah in every corner, but they can't
But
find him.
Muhammad is in the Bible, Allah is in the Bible, and by the way, the
Yeah,
Bible's corrupt. So those names are in the corrupted Bible. I guarantee you, if you find the uncorrupted Bible, it's not in there. Winning. Anyway, I'm hoping the Muslims can find us a copy of that Bible that Muhammad had back in the day, that before it was corrupted. If you guys can mail me a copy, just please contact me. Looking forward to that. So, Alleluia is derived from Hebrew. It means praise to Yah. Alleluia, and does not refer to Allah. Allah is a proper name. So now you've got this issue because they've decided Allah is a name. Then this is praise to Yah, not praise to Allah. It's not Alleluia.
yeah.
Alleluia is a distinct term with no association to Allah. Oh, Baal married his mother, Ashera, in Ugaritic writing. That's very interesting because Ugaritic is relevant here. That's actually relevant in the story of Noah. In Christianity, in the Bible, Noah has three sons, right? Ham, Shem, and Japheth. In Islam, Noah has four sons. And those four sons, the fourth one is called Yam. Yam happens to be the god of the flood. Yam happens to be the chief rival of the main deity, Baal. Baal, in that particular mythology, has three daughters. So, and he fights against Yam every year, who's the god of the flood. So Yam dies. Yam, the fourth son, doesn't accept God, Allah, and dies in the flood. The waters kill him. So they've made up a fourth son named after a pagan deity. Any comments or thoughts, TDK?
Yeah, that's interesting. I remember you mentioned this in the other stream. And yeah, like, what are the odds, like, of all of these mentioning the same thing, like the three daughters and linking back to Baal and the practices? Like, it's all pointing that Allah is definitely in connection to the moon god, the moon deity.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to talk about Allah in the Arabic Bible as well. I'm going to mention one or two scholarly quotes on that. So, Jamison, we will come to that as well. That's a question we need to tackle as I go through the series over the next couple of weeks. I'm hoping to find more sources, especially earlier sources, 18th, 19th century as well, that have covered and discussed this. A lot of research today is actually just going back over old ground that scholars covered in the past. All right, so reputable sources like various international encyclopedias. Now remember, in the 80s and 90s, it was hard for Robert Morey to find sources. It's much easier for us today, but he was referencing encyclopedias like the International Bible Standard Encyclopedia, right? Muslims claim Jesus used the name Allah from the cross. He said, Allah, Allah, Allah sabachthani, right? When he was dying on the cross, right? He said,
Eli, yeah.
Yeah, they claim that he was actually saying not Eli, Eli. He was saying Allah, Allah. I've heard this too, and it's
Yeah, it's not the word that is coming from is El. So El, like Elohim, not Allah. It's not in connection.
Yeah, and the Greek New Testament quotes Aramaic, not Arabic. So this is before Standard Arabic was even formed as a language, and it's certainly long before Arabic was formed as a written language. And of course, in this incident, they're drawing on Psalm 22. Psalm 22 also apparently references a prophecy from the book of Daniel. So this is a reference apparently from Psalm 22 to the book of Daniel, to something that, so Jesus is fulfilling an older prophecy as far as I know.
Yeah.
I actually finished my presentation, and then I forgot to save it, and I closed the file, and I then had to, in the last hour, recreate the whole thing from scratch. So I don't have the Daniel reference here. So because I preferred the new one I redid. But so the phrase translates to my God, Eli, Eli, not Allah, Allah. And if he was calling a name, the name Allah was not in the Bible. Jesus would have been saying Yahweh, Yahweh, or Yah, Yah, not Allah, because Allah is not mentioned as a name in the Bible. Would that be correct, TDK?
Yes, that would be correct. As you see, it says my God, which is, it's coming from El, which is God, not Allah.
Yeah. Okay, so Eli is not related to Allah and represents a significant linguistic difference. So the phrase translates to my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Oops. So El in Eli comes from the Hebrew word for God. Allah is the Arabic name. So the God versus name. We know that Yahweh is the name of the biblical God, of the Jewish and Christian God. So despite both referring to a monotheistic deity, these terms have distinct linguistic and cultural origins, with El being Semitic and Allah being Arabic. So there are some distinctions that are important.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, Allah is the proper name of God amongst Muslims, corresponding in usage to Jehovah or Yahweh amongst the Hebrews. Thus, it is not to be regarded as a common noun meaning God. Now, what's interesting is Muslims will always say, hold on, but in the Arabic Bible, they say Allah too. However, within the Arabic Bible, for Arabic-speaking Christians, it just means the God, and they know that the name of this God is Yahweh. So it's used as a definite article, not as a proper name. Just jump in anytime if you want to, right?
Yeah.
So, thus, it is not to be regarded as a common noun meaning God, capital G, as the one true God, or God, small g, right, as in referring to generic gods. And the Muslim must use another word or form if he wishes to indicate any other than his own particular deity, or peculiar, they say, deity. So Allah doesn't refer to gods in generic terms or general terms. It's a name of someone, like Frank.
That's right.
John.
Yeah, that's right. That's why I would have mentioned like with La Ilah, Ilaha, Ilah, like the difference with Ilah and Allah, they're using Ilah as God, and the name of that God is Allah. So that's the distinction they're making. So as you're mentioning here, the name Allah is it's a name. It's not a word meaning God, and they use Allah to refer to other deities. Ilah.
Right. So there is a distinction. Elah. So yeah, it says here Eli should be pronounced Eli. The first E like E in bed. Eli. Elle.
Yeah.
Elle.
Eli. Yeah. Eli.
Okay.
Or,
Yeah. Look, guys. As you know, I speak every single language on earth except Greek, and the problem is that looks like Greek to me. So I'm stuck just there. So yeah. Ek kan Afrikaans praat. Ons kan altyd Afrikaans praat en dan gaan niemand my verstaan nie, net die mense in Suid-Afrika. Ja, that's te min for me. That's te min for me. Too few Lloyds. Yes, Citos, thank you. What languages do you speak, TDK?
I just speak English, and I knew a little bit of Arabic, not that deep, and a little French, but yeah, I don't know that much. Yeah.
Okay, no worries. Okay, so let's have a look. Similarly, no plural can be formed from the name Allah. No plural. Okay, so gods is out. The word gods is out. Similarly, no plural can be formed from it. And though the liberal Muslim may admit that Christians or Jews call upon Allah, he could never speak of the Allah of the Christians or the Allah of the Jews, because we have a Yahweh, right? And he could never speak of the God of the Jews or the God of the Christians using the word Allah because it's a proper name. It's like saying, well, there's the Frank of the Jews and the Frank of the Christians, except Frank is called Yahweh in the Bible, so we would never use the word Frank, right?
Yeah.
Among Christians,
Yeah.
too, a similar usage holds. In the current Arabic Bible versions, God is uniformly rendered Allah, and that's because of cultural domination due to Arabs, Arabic cultural spread, right? Especially because Christians are minorities, and over time, over hundreds of years, they've assimilated to using the word Allah, but they use it as the definite article, not as a pronoun, not as a proper name.
Yeah, exactly. Also, one point to a point to I want to address something like the Jews in the time of Muhammad was mocking Allah, saying Allah hands are tied up, and they were like speaking against Allah. So if Allah was their God as well, if it was the same God or the same word, why would the Jews be mocking Allah if it was the same God that they were just? It's a different God.
That's a really good point. That's fantastic. Yes, you're right. In the Sira as well. I mean, Muhammad gets very upset and eventually ends up killing them because they won't submit.
Exactly, he has a different and the different God, and the Jews won't accept him. Yeah.
Exactly. If he was familiar, then why would they not accept him? That is crazy. So yeah, in the current Arabic Bible versions, God is uniformly rendered Allah, but when the Lord God occurs, it is rendered Arabul Illahu, the Lord, the Illah, where the Illah is an uncontracted form. This comes from the assumption that Allah comes from Al-Illah, which many scholars do not agree with, right? So notice here, when they say the Lord God, then it becomes Arab ul Illahu. So then the usage changes. Why are we not saying the Allah? It's so there. I mean, really, there's the contradiction steps in.
Yeah, that's right.
And of course, here they go with the standard narrative of Allah has been shortened through usage from Illah, right? What they speak of here. The Muslim, who usually derives and explains Illah as meaning worshipped, uses it and its plural aliha in the broadest way of any god. So now, hold on, now we learn something. Illah means worshipped, the worshipped one, the deity, the worshipped one, the god. But here the Muslims apparently use the worshipped one, and it's plural aliha, like the Aramaic Allah, in the broadest way of any god. So this could be Baal, this could be Jupiter.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, why don't Muslims accept Judaism? It was already a monotheistic faith long before Mo came along. The Jews rejected him, right? And then only after the Jews reject him does Muhammad actually make the claims that Islam is Abrahamic. He does not make that claim prior, right? So the Jews reject it. And then also, if you read the Sira, now this is not to say, look, the Sira is clearly fictional, right? However, it is clearly based in a given context. It's trying to provide a certain message, and it's obviously derived from certain historical facts, from a geography and a milieu. So the Sira tells us that they reject Judaism and they reject Christianity for the religion because they claim that we corrupted the Bible, we corrupted the message of Abraham. Islam searches for the true message of Abraham, the true religion, the true faith, in fact, the original faith of Abraham before he followed Yahweh. And according to Jewish sources, before Abraham became a Jew, the first Jew, where he follows Yahweh, becomes a Yahwist, he was a Sabaean, right? Or Sabian, rather. No, Sabian. And thus he was a pagan who was a moon worshipper who worshipped the moon god Sin, or the Babylonian pantheon. And the head of the Babylonian pantheon was Sin, also known as Al-Makkah in Arabia. Makkah, you've heard of a place called Makkah. So they reject it because they go for the religion before Abraham worshipped the false god Yahweh. Therefore, they are not an Abrahamic religion in the sense of they only make the claim after the rejection by the Jews. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, let's continue. Let's see. Okay, let's continue. So Allah was the name of a pagan deity in pre-Islamic Arabia before Muhammad. Now, the Bible is completed 600 years before Muhammad's ministry, which starts in roughly 610 AD. Biblical authors, particularly those of the Old Testament, could not have used Allah in its post-Muhammad context. There's no record of Allah being used in the context that Muhammad used it in the Old Testament. So he clearly deviates from the standard biblical narrative. Authors would never confuse Jehovah or Yahweh with Allah, nor would they confuse Allah with Baal or Zeus or Jupiter or Asherah or anything like that.
Yeah.
Allah never appeared in the writings of any biblical author, not as a name at the very minimum. Allah was either a curse or an oak tree, a pagan symbol, an idol. Any comments?
Yeah, that's right. Like, there's no mention of Allah, and there's a distinction. Like, if it was the same, like I mentioned, then they would have obviously followed him. But it's a different God he brought.
Yeah, and also the Jews did speak Arabic. I mean, those were Arabized Jews. The Encyclopedia of Religion states Allah is a proper name applicable to their peculiar God, as in Arabia. I mean, I showed that quote on our previous talk. I actually showed the quote from the book. Allah is a proper name applicable to the peculiar God of Arabia. It doesn't say the God of Abraham, the God of Christianity, the God of the Bible. It says the God of Arabia, specifically to that locale. Allah is identified as a pre-Islamic name corresponding to the Babylonian Baal. And I've already shown, and I will show in the future, within the Sirah, you've got Baal, and Muhammad is consecrated to Baal. And he's called Hubal in this context, in this location. Probably like, yes, villainous, probably like Mormons get irritated when Christians tell them they are not Christians. Yes, agreed.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Right? Now, Baal worship, including references in the Bible, was explicitly condemned, right? And who was Baal's consort? Asherah. And that was condemned. In fact, the Jews were instructed to burn and destroy those particular idols and those particular temples to Baal and Asherah. Now, Muhammad was raised in an astral religion, see my monotheism series, right? Practiced by the Quraysh tribe, worshipping Allah as the moon god, symbolized by the crescent moon. It's right on top of their mosque, right? I think it's pretty obvious. Islam retains the crescent moon as its symbol today. Allah was associated with the sun goddess, together producing 3 daughters. Now, of course, everyone goes, well, in Greece and in Rome, actually the sun is the male and the moon is the female. So therefore you can't be right. Except in Babylon and Arabia, because Arabia was duplicating the Babylonian pantheon, the moon was the male and the sun was the female. It was inverted. Yeah. Any comment or thoughts?
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Yeah, the level that they would go to try to escape from it, but they can't.
Yeah. Andrew, you should really come on and talk to us about that. So, okay, yeah. So let's see. There were 3 daughters. Alat, which is the feminine form of Allah, and her name is Lat, the Lat. Al meaning the, definite article. Lat, name being Lat. Al-Uzza and Al-Manat. Often you'll see just Manat stand alone minus the Al. These 3 daughters were favored deities in Muhammad's religious context. And of course, the deity of the Kaaba at the time, the Allah of the Kaaba, was called Hubal. Hubal was Baal. Baal had 3 daughters. Muhammad's father was named Abdullah, meaning servant of. Technically, it's actually slave of. I mean, unfortunately, this is commonly translated as servant. It means slave. Abdullah. So who was the Allah that Abdullah, Muhammad's father, was worshipping if Allah wasn't around, because Muhammad created Islam? And
yeah, exactly.
And he wasn't a Muslim. So who was Allah then at that point? I think that's a fair question.
Yeah.
His cousin's name, now you'll see some sources will say uncle, you'll see cousin. Technically, it's apparently not his cousin. It's a contemporary who's part of the extended tribe, part of the family. But so, yeah, I'm just saying cousin here. It's convenient. His cousin's name included Allah as well. In fact, Allah, that was Ubaidullah, right? Ubaidullah. So you had Ubaidullah. In fact, I'm just going to bring that up. We just do that. Yeah, Ubaidullah. So I'm going to zoom into this here. You'll see Ubaidullah. This is someone born at the same time as Muhammad, or prior to Muhammad. So you had Ubaidullah. Let me just here we go. Ubaidullah. So Ubaidullah, right? So the term Allah was in use in people's names before Muhammad was even born. So who was this Allah that was around at the time? If Allah is unique, if Muhammad's the first to introduce Allah, then who was this Allah who was around at the time? You can see lots of Ubaidullah, right? Ubaidullah squatted beneath him. And oh yeah, by the way, let me just read this little story to you. It's very amusing. It's something that Muslims don't want to really share with you because, but it really tells us something. This is the Guillaume's life of Muhammad. The apostle made for a rock on the mountain to climb it. He had become heavy by reason of his age. In other words, Muhammad was fat. And moreover, he had put on 2 coats of mail. Of course he did. So when he tried to get up, he could not get on the rock. So Ubaidullah squatted beneath him and lifted him up. So just so by the way, Muslims, Muhammad apparently got real fat in his old age. Any comment, TDK, before I go on?
No, it's interesting. Very interesting story.
Yeah, I'll be talking about this particular book. I'm going to be talking about the hadiths and the Sirah as well, the reliability of those. I'll do a talk on that soon as well. Okay, so Muhammad's father is called Abdullah, and his cousin, his friend, his companion is called Ubaidullah, okay, indicating the presence of Allah in their names before Muhammad's birth. So this historical context shows that the name Allah was around before Muhammad, and it was a part of a pantheon of Arabian deities. Allah was the head of that pantheon, known as Shin, right? Known as Makkah.
Yeah, the moon god.
So the worship included a high god, Allah, alongside the sun goddess and their daughters. So the Encyclopaedia of Mythology and World Religion states, along with Allah, they worshipped a host of lesser gods and daughters of Allah, right? So this I get from Robert Morey. So this overview is based on historical documentation, not religious bias, right?
Yeah.
Oh God, this poor guy. If you're not lying, provide another word for God in an Arabic Bible. It's not the name of God because Yahweh is the name of the Christian God, even in Arabic. It's simply using context of the God, not as his proper name. So, anywho, now, so I want to go to the Encyclopedia of Religion and Ethics. Let me just go to that reference. And Hastings. Let me go to Hastings. I want to bring up this text. And I've got to go to 326, 356. So let me go to that. Any comments before I go on? TDK?
Yeah, that comment that the person previously left, like it's so common. Like I keep getting that all the time. Like there's other words that the Arab Christians use, as we know. There's one Arab that they use to refer to their God, or as we have spoken, Al-Ilah, if you wanted to say the God. So we already cleared that up that it's not Allah. But yeah, because of the Islamic rule over the Christians, that it's been passed down now as common to use Allah, but they're not referring to Allah that the Muslim worship.
Yeah, and also Allah has a son, right? In the Arabic Bible, Allah has a son. So yeah, Wusu Sise, right? Do you agree then that Allah has a son who came down to earth? Would you agree then with those Christians in that Bible? Because I think, as far as I know, that's what they say. Those Arab Christians say that.
Yeah, exactly.
No, Allah is the God. But if you look at the guys here to troll, I mean, so whatever. Okay, let's continue. Now, notice it says here, Allah. So in this reference, Allah is the proper name of God amongst Muslims. It's not the God, it's the proper name of God, corresponding to Jehovah. I've already covered this, right? Let me go to the top here. Oops. Have I gone too far? Yeah. So it says here, there exists no God except the one whom we already called Allah. That's fine, but we know that Allah existed before Muhammad was even born, right? Allah is a proper name applicable only to their peculiar God, right? Now, there's the possibility. Now, the idea of al-illah, becoming Allah, is mentioned in a couple of Islamic sources only. And this idea of al-illah being contracted to Allah is only a theory. It's not by no means proven. It's just a very tentative theory, even in Islam. At-Tabari writes, and he's, as they say, the greatest commentator on the Quran of the old school, right? And he has very little on the word, and he discusses the possibility of the contraction of al-illah to Allah, right? And then you have Ar-Razi, who asks whether God can have a proper name. He says, does he even have a name? Do we even know it? Does he have? Maybe he's got no name. Maybe it's the God with no name. The first position, he says, the earlier philosophers denied. So the early Muslims said that no, God has no name, right? And if the thing named could not be known because Allah is unknowable, there was no use for the name, and therefore it's just a nameless deity. Your thoughts?
Yeah, either they have to come to this, either way they go, like it's just a dead end for them. So all of the evidence are going against them.
Yeah, I mean, it's like whether they go left or whether they go right, it's a dead end either way. It just becomes problematic for them. Okay, so I've only got a couple more slides to go. I've got about 3 more slides and we should be done for tonight. So Muhammad's use of the name came from pagan religions, right? I've already shown this from the Sirah, and this is supposed to be the history of Muhammad, that, you know, the most authentic history of Muhammad that Muslims have. And of course, that history is complete trash anyway, but it's what they have. And even it doesn't stand in their corner in their defense. Right, let's continue. Yeah, and also T. Saunders writes a very good point here. It's wrong to compare Allah with the Hebrew or Greek for God. So you have El in Hebrew, you've got Al-Ilah in the Arabic, and you've got Ho-Theos. Al-Ilah is the Arabization of the Greek Ho-Theos, right? Because Allah is an Arabic term, and it's a proper name, whereas these are not proper names. These are the definite article, the God, and that God has a name, Yahweh. So thank you. So, some historical context. Allah before Islam. Now, these again are the references of Morey. I haven't checked every single one of these particular references, so I may have made some errors or something, or I might have transcribed it incorrectly, so just beware. Thank you, T. Saunders. Thank you. So, notice here, the Jews say, thank you very much, Andrew Martin, Quran 5:64, and the Jews say, the hand of Allah is chained. Is the hand of God changed, TDK?
Exactly. This is it. This is the point that I was referring to. The Jews wouldn't say that if they believe in that Allah. So no, it's not.
Yeah, so the Jews are clearly not talking about the same deity. Yeah, Allah is an idol. And yeah, so Encyclopedia of Islam, Khutzma, Allah is found in Arabic inscriptions prior to Islam, right? And this would be from a pagan context. Encyclopedia Britannica, the Arabs before the time of Muhammad accepted and worshipped a supreme god called Allah. That's fascinating. He was the head of the pantheon of deities, of the Babylonian pantheon, because the Arabs borrowed the Babylonian pantheon. In fact, one scholar actually writes that they may have originated that pantheon, and it went from Yemen, east and north, to Babylon, and then came back with Nabonidus. So yeah, so you ponder that. Encyclopedia of Islam. Allah was known to the pre-Islamic Arabs as one of the Meccan deities, one of the Meccan deities. Encyclopedia of Islam, Lewis. Allah appears in pre-Islamic poetry. Al-Illah was contracted to Allah. We know that this theory is considered by these scholars untenable. But Allah appears in pre-Islamic poetry. We will mention this particular point about the poetry again, right? There's a lot to be said there. Encyclopedia of World Mythology and Legend, the name Allah goes back before Muhammad. Encyclopedia of Religion and Ethics, the origin of Allah's name goes back to pre-Muslim times. It is not a common name for God. Henry Smith, Harvard University. Allah was already known by name to the Arabs. We know this even from the Muslim sources. So, Dr. Kenneth Craig. Now, Holiness, yeah. Now, Wusu Sise says Jews believe Christianity is false, and that's fine. You, of course, get Messianic Jews who do not. But of course, there's certainly theological reasons for that within Judaism. However, Muslims also believe in the Sharia that Christianity is false, and they believe they have to murder the Christians and murder the Jews who won't convert. I'd say that's a slight difference. And for those who are going to come and lie to me about the Talmud, I've spent months reading the Talmud. Please don't lie to me, because I'm willing to bet I know it a little bit better than you do. I've got many, many hours on the Talmud, so don't come and try and compare that. So the Sharia is completely different. So yeah, the difference is that Muslims are trying to impose themselves politically, and of course militarily through violence, through jihad. Dr. Kenneth Craig, the name Allah is evident in archaeological and literary remains of pre-Islamic Arabia. So it goes back, even if paganism was not present at the time of Muhammad's birth, and according to Muslim sources, paganism was the case, it actually goes back in the archaeological record well prior to Muhammad as well. Any comments before I go to the last two slides?
Yeah, that's true. Like again, it's all implying that Allah is a name, which the Muslim believe in, but those that are trying to like disprove it and say it's not, they are the one coming with these arguments that it's not, but the evidence proves otherwise. So yeah, it's against them.
Yeah, hold on. This guy is definitely semi-retarded. Let me hold on a second here. Let me just go to my channel. Give me one moment, because this guy clearly, who is the God of the Christians? I think we've already discussed that. And I think we know that Yahweh is the God of the Christians. It is not Allah. That is something that is rejected. Now, do me a favor. I'm gonna put you in timeout. I'm gonna be nice to you for 30 minutes. I'm gonna put you in timeout because I have a limit to the amount of stupid that I will engage with. All right, let's continue. Okay, Allah is not biblical and Allah is not Christian, at least not as a proper name. Allah, within the biblical Hebrew context, is either a tree as an idol, a pagan idol, or a curse. So something negative. Yeah, and if Muslims say they worship God as Christians, the same God, then you worship Jehovah, Yahweh, and Jesus. And then, of course, you accept that Allah had a son.
Yeah, which Allah says he doesn't have a son.
Yeah, so I don't know. So William Montgomery Watt highlights the belief in Allah as a high God in Mecca as crucial for understanding Muhammad and Islam's origin. Right? Muhammad, he's written multiple books. He's written two called Muhammad at Mecca and Muhammad at Medina. So this belief represents a unique form of paganism that needs distinct consideration because it's a monotheistic paganism. Caesar Farah states, there's no reason to accept the idea that Allah passed to the Muslims from the Christians and the Jews. Fair enough. I think we've already decided that this is the case.
Yeah.
Yeah, so hold on, Mark Ivy. Yeah, if Allah is the God of the Christians, then why can they not refer to him as Father? Fair point. Thank you very much, Mark. That's a very good point. Yeah. So, yeah.
He's not the father. Yeah, he said it. He's not the father of anyone. Neither does he have a son. And yeah, it's not the same. Everywhere you turn, like Allah is not the same as the God we worship.
Okay, so various sources state that Allah derives from al-Illah. Now we know already that many of the scholars that I've referenced do not agree with this al-Illah theory, referring to a particular Arabian deity. That's the speculation about the source. The fact of Allah being a pre-Arabian pagan deity is not what is considered here. Well, is not considered at all an issue or speculated upon, but the derivation of the name, that's what's speculated upon, right? Al-Illah is not accepted by many of these scholars. Allah was represented as an island in Mecca where people prayed long before Muhammad's birth. That's even in the Muslim sources. Clarification of the name Allah, it's not Syriac, it's not Hebrew or Greek name for God. The word may be present in these languages in some other form, but it's not a name for God. It's a distinctively Arabic term related to the pre-Islamic religious context. So pre-Islamic Arabian religions featured astral beliefs. The Sabian religion, dominant at Muhammad's birth, worshipped the sun goddess and the moon god. Scholars, including Alfred Kellam, indicate that the moon god was called Allah. Right? I've covered this extensively in my monotheism series. Just do note, as I said, I forgot to save my slides. Anyway, so an hour before, I'd been working for several hours on a couple of days on this. I forgot to save my slides. I somehow lost my PowerPoint. I had to start fresh, like an hour and a half before I went live. And so I may have made a couple of mistakes in my new transcription. Right, so the name here, Alfred Keller, may be wrong. Significance. Understanding these connections helps us clarify the historical context of Allah in pre-Islamic Arabia. So, couple of slides. The Sabians, or the Sabaeans, now a slightly different group, a Muslim perspective. Muslim writer Muhammad Shukri al-Alusi, who died in 1854, compared the religious practices of the Sabaeans to Islam in his Bulugh al-Arab fi Ahwal al-Arab. Arabs, during the pre-Islamic period, used to practice things that were included in the Islamic Sharia. They, for example, did not marry both a mother and her daughter. They considered marrying two sisters simultaneously to be a heinous crime. They censured anyone who married his stepmother. They made the major Hajj and the minor Umrah pilgrimage to the Kaaba. This is the same as the Sabaeans. These were moon worshippers. Don't forget, these are moon worshippers who had exactly the same practices as modern Islam. They made the major Hajj, minor Umrah pilgrimage to the Kaaba. They performed the circumambulation around the Kaaba tawaf. They ran 7 times between Safa and Marwa. They threw rocks and they washed themselves after sexual intercourse. They gargled, sniffed water up into their noses, clipped their fingernails, removed all pubic hair, and performed ritual circumcision. They cut off the right hand of a thief and stoned adulterers. The Sabaeans. Your thoughts, TDK, before I continue?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's definitely in connection to what the Muslim practice. And a point that I wanted to point out is that, even before Muhammad, the pagans, the Arab, they used to go around the Kaaba, and the black stone was used as for like when they weren't fertile, they would go around and touch their reproductive parts, and they would touch the black stone, thinking that it will make them to give birth. So it's in connection as well with Baal, is also referred to as a god of fertility. And it's so much practices, like as well with the black stone, it forgives sin. So if you look at it, what Allah forgives sin and the black stone forgives sin is like two God they have. Like it's purely paganism, and it's not monotheism at all. It's monotheism.
Yeah. And Prince Christian says, Prince Christian, I have answered your question prior to this, so go back to the section where I speak of the Arabian origins of Islam and how the Muslims follow the pre-Yahwistic religion of Abraham. So look at that section. Go to the previous show that I did with TDK as well. I answered that for you there. Okay, they reject Judaism and Christianity, and they follow the religion that Abraham followed before he followed Yahweh. This would be the Sabaean religion, which is the moon worship religion of Babylon. Right? The Sabaeans have 5 prayers, similar to the 5 prayers of the Muslims. Others say they have 7 prayers, 5 of which are comparable to the prayers of the Muslims. Of course, they have 2 optional prayers, which were also part of the pagan religion. With regard to time, that is morning, noon, afternoon, evening, and night. The 6th is at midnight, and the 7th at forenoon. It is their practice to pray over the dead without kneeling down or bending the knee. They also fast for 1 lunar month of 30 days. They start their fast at the last watch of the night and continue till the setting of the sun. Some of their sects fast during the month of Ramadan. They face the Kaaba when they pray. They venerate Mecca and believe. So hold on, Mecca existed before Muhammad? Interesting. And believed in making the pilgrimage to it. And dead bodies, blood, and the flesh of pigs was unlawful because it's haram in Islam. They also forbid marriage for the same reason as do Muslims. So these pagans, these moon worshippers, these worshippers of the moon god Sin al-Makkah, Hubal, had exactly the same practices as Islam. Isn't that just a strange coincidence?
Yeah, it's a strange coincidence. It's like you would think that Muhammad is just copying. Like when you do your homework, he just copy without knowing what he's copying and put it into his religion and say, oh yeah, this is monotheism.
Yeah, amazing coincidences. Yeah, that's what Islam is. It's a series of amazing coincidences. So to wind down the last couple of slides, in Bulugh al-Arab fi Ahwal al-Arab, we read the 4 sacred months, Rajab, Dhu al-Qada, Dhu al-Hijjah, and Muharram, had been considered sacred during the pre-Islamic period, the Jahiliyyah. Now, do understand that the Jahiliyyah is not over. It's commonly propagandized as the period of the Jahiliyyah, the primitive period, before the coming of Muhammad. No, you are still in the Jahiliyyah. It is the condition of ignorance. Correctly, it is the condition of ignorance. If you're not a Muslim, you're in the Jahiliyyah, and they've got to fix that. Right? Raids, taking revenge, war, fighting and disputes were forbidden during the month of Ramadan. If a man were to meet his enemy who killed his father or brother during these months, he would not quarrel with him. During the sacred months, the people were under restriction not to fight or make raids and had to remove their spearheads as a sign they would avoid fighting at all costs. Obviously, Islam borrowed the hallowing of these months from pre-Islamic Arabs and introduced nothing new into the world. That's Abdullah Abdul Fadi is the Quran Infallible, page 127. Now, Muhammad was a Sabi, so we've just mentioned the Sabaeans. It was said about the Sabians of Iran that they used to make a yearly pilgrim to the pyramids of Egypt, because ultimately it comes from the religion of the Egyptians, the sacred religion, whatever, of the Egyptians, the mystery religion. Maimonides, that's the Jewish sage, says that the Sabians are remnants of the ancient Egyptian priests who practiced hieroglyphic magic, a system of language encoding that can engineer consciousness. Right? And this is where we have the term harf come in, right? Commonly, letter of the alphabet, word, a Quranic reading or dialect. So harf, huruf. The proper technical definition of harf or huruf, right, is onomatomancy, a magical practice based on the occult properties of the letters of the alphabet and of the divine and angelic names which they form. That's in the Encyclopaedia of Islam. Any comments, TDK?
No, this is I'm learning some stuff here, equipping myself with all these references and evidence.
This is akhruf, the huruf, akhruf, you see, akhruf. That's the akhruf. The akhruf actually is a form of magic.
Okay.
So document says, why does the Arabic Bible use the same name? They don't use the same name. It's Yahweh.
Yeah.
Allah means the La, the God. It's the definite article for the God being called Yahweh. Whereas in Arabic, Allah is a proper name. It's his name. Jesus equals Hail Zeus. You know, thank you for playing. I appreciate your time and your effort. And you're about to be banned and say goodbye to the camera. Have a nice day. Oh, good grief. My camera's going to do something weird again because it has gesture-sensitive settings. Okay, let me continue. Thoth of ancient Egypt was a moon god. They also had other deities who also served as moon gods. Thoth is Hermes Trismegistus, who is the father of Hermeticism, from which we get Gnosticism. Now, here's Da'if Bukhari. And for those who don't know what a joke is, or sarcasm, right? Because there are many Muslims, and I'm referring to you Muslims, who have no idea what a joke is or what sarcasm is and don't know your sources. It's Sahih Bukhari, just so you know. But the problem is, every time we quote the Sahih, Muslims tell us that's Da'if, brother. So I'm just calling it Da'if Bukhari because that's what Muslims call it. She asked where, and they said to Allah's messenger. So she said, do you mean the man who is called the Sabi with a new religion? And they replied, yes, the same person. So come along. And they brought her to the Prophet, who was a Sabi, who was a Sabaean, which is the moon-worshipping pagan religion that has exactly the same practices as Islam. Do you think that's a coincidence, TDK?
No, it's not. This is like clear cut, like showing where he's getting his religion from. Yeah.
Yeah, isn't that odd that Sahih Bukhari, Da'if Bukhari, tells that Muhammad a Sabi, a Sabian, a moon-worshipping pagan? Isn't that just
very strange?
Bukhari is Islamic.
I can see why you put Da'if Bukhari.
So, yes, Islam is a cheap mishmash of pagan religions and Judeo-Christian beliefs. Exactly. It's, in fact, Gnostic beliefs, not even necessarily Christian. It's Gnostic.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
This is from the Encyclopedia of the Quran, right? Which is like 5,000 pages long. The Quran provides the Sabaeans with a religious status comparable to that of the Jews and the Christians. Of course, these are moon-worshipping pagans, but somehow the Quran thinks that's Christian. That's insane. It's insanity.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think that's it. Sorry, that's where we end.
Okay, yeah. So that's also a good point, because you would see that Muhammad does not understand the Trinity. Neither he does he has history, right? He's getting these teachings from Gnostics, and
Yep.
yeah, like Jesus did not die on the cross, and all these beliefs, like historically, that's inaccurate. Like everything, it's just pointing that he's copying, and as the sources show, like it's clear cut that he's copying and taking his god as from the moon god. Yeah, Allah.
Yeah, yeah. And also, what's interesting is they say that Allah is like nothing else. Okay, Allah is unique. Now, what do we know? Allah is one hand, one shin, a vagina that clings to his leg. Um, Allah has two right hands, which could be
Yeah,
seen as two right hands. I've got two very important, like if you think of God the Father has two right hands. A right hand man is my best man, my most
yeah,
important, my critical feature or faculty. The Holy Spirit and the Son, right? My two right
yeah,
hands. You can actually see it in that sense. But also,
yeah,
they say Allah is like nothing you've ever seen, except Allah is like clearly a twisted, sort of crippled midget. Okay,
yeah,
deformed midget. Whereas if you think about, they complain about the Trinity, but the Trinity is like nothing else. Whereas in Islam, Allah is monotheistic, and we know exactly what monotheism is. Here's a cup; it's one thing. It's monotheistic. It's mono. It's one thing. Allah is
yeah,
mono. Allah is mono. He's just a block of wood.
yeah.
Whereas
It's like
God
those.
is a
Yeah,
Trinity, which is beyond anything that God. The
exact.
Trinity conforms to the Quranic description of Allah. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like you could say for the same thing, people worship Satan and they're monotheists. They're monotheists. So what does that mean? Like that's not something new. Is the God? Is he really God? If he is one God, and from everything, every evidence proves that he's not God. No way. He's an idol, and as we see, he's deformed, having two right hand. He's twisted. Like it's so messed up.
Yeah, completely. So yeah, so I guess we can end here. It's been like an hour and a half. So those are the slides that
Yeah.
I wanted to cover. So guys, for the audience, I hope that's been interesting. I'm streaming on Rumble, I'm streaming on X, and I am streaming on YouTube, of course. And I'll try and do this. So I've taken a month's subscription to StreamYard, and yeah. So hopefully this is enlightening for all of you. Hopefully it raises some questions, answers some questions. Hopefully this means that we go back and we start to question some things we've been told in the standard Islamic narrative, and we start to examine older research. And yeah, I'm going to be going through this. This is the first 17 slides, and I think they're probably going to be like 50 or 60 or something. So yeah, any last words from you, TDK?
Yeah, the last word is we have confirmed, like the question of the title of the video. Allah is definitely a moon god, and yeah, Muslims should reconsider what they worship and the practices, and as we shown where they're coming from. So yeah.
Yeah, so guys, thank you very much for your time. I'm really glad to have had you here, and I'll see you on Tuesday evening. I have another stream already set. Thunderous, if you pop around, you're invited for Tuesday. Otherwise, we'll meet up this week. It's incredibly hot. It's very uncomfortable here. I have two fans now in the room. Otherwise, I absolutely could
Yeah.
not stream. It's way too uncomfortable. It's incredibly hot here in Poland right now. Also,
Yeah.
I have a cold. I'm not well. So, but guys, thanks. I shall see you in a couple of days. And TDK, you're welcome to join me the next time we have part 2 of this one.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for having me. Thank you, everyone, and yeah, God bless you all.
Thank you, everyone. Good night. God bless. Take care.